We're in ninth grade lit, and I've just passed out our books and study guides for Henry V. And we are going to watch a couple of videos that I'm going to record for us here that you might appreciate. Again, it's just, I don't think we'll watch the whole thing here. I haven't watched it all, but you get the idea if you just watch half of it. It's kind of compelling though. Make sure you read what it says right there. He's literally, on the day that this was recorded, he's 3 years old. Not 3 and a half, not 3 3/4, not 3 1/4. He's 3 years old.
Wait, so he's 3 years old.
Where's the king? King has served the food in battle. After that,
Fighting men.
to have school fees for presents. That's 5 to 1. Dinner was first. Dinner before. And no one here. But 110 firemen that do work today. What's see that was said? So my cousin was born. Now my fair cousin. We are not to die. We enough to can see us. But yes, the few men the greatest honor. God will pay us not one man more. Well, God was to us. There ain't no stomach left. As fast dead me and God's cup in his purse. We not die now, man, come sip to die with us. This day is called the feast of Christmas. What comes after that?
He that outlives this day.
Come to, will stand and jump down his day's name. And well in the name of Christmas. What comes
He that shall outlive this day and see old age.
I know this. He's his neighbor and say tomorrow is St. Christmas. When a stupid she so us and say, gee whiz, I have Christmas Day. Oh man, forget just got burned. What comes
But he'll remember
down
with advantages what
feet he did that day. None have a hurricane book next to it. Book south, go big, go
Can't even pronounce the word. That's what that is.
First remember, this story so government details some customer none of why. From this day, they never but we in it. So remember, we feel, we happy feel, we bear the butter. But she that but for me my butter. We not survive this thing, so this is good this. This is not bad. So flip this out the gas on here. And hold down so stick where he takes that spot of bus. Time say Christmas Day.
Now, I don't know how that makes you feel, but
Makes me feel
you're
bad.
oldest child, this 3-year-old can do that energy into, anyway, I think that's crazy. I can't imagine. We're not done.
Oh, shoot.
No, we cannot watch Peppa Pig.
Peppa Pig!
All right, so listen to the professional do it.
He kind of looks like that.
Quality writing makes your schoolwork better and helps you stand out in the process.
He kind of looks like the actor.
Did you see the shirt he was wearing?
Himself as Rose confused that back.
Of fighting men. They have full peaceful power. That's 5-1. Besides, they are all fresh. These are fearful odds. Oh, that we now had here. But 1/10,000 of those men in England that do no work today.
What's he that wishes so? My cousin Westmoreland? No, my fair cousin. If we are marked to die, we are enough to do our country loss. And if to live, the fewer men, the greater share of honor. God's will, I pray thee, wish not one man more. Brother, proclaim it, Westmoreland, through my host, that he which hath no stomach to this fight, let him depart. His passport shall be made, and crowns for convoy put into his purse. We would not die in that man's company that fears his fellowship to die with us. This day is called the Feast of Crispian. He that outlives this day and comes safe home will stand and tiptoe when this day is named, and arouse him at the name of Crispian. He that shall see this day and live old age will yearly, on the vigil, feast his neighbours and say, tomorrow is St. Crispin's. Then will he strip his sleeve and show his scars, and say, these wounds I had on Crispin's day. Old men forget, yet all shall be forgot, but he'll remember with advantages what feats he did that day. Mention our names, familiar in their mouths as household words. Harry the King, Bedford and Exeter, Warwick and Talbot, Salisbury and Gloucester be in their flowing cups freshly remembered. This story shall the good man teach his son, and Crispian shall ne'er go by from this day to the ending of the world, but we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, for he today that sheds his blood with me shall be my brother. Be he ne'er so vile, this day shall gentle his condition. And gentlemen in England now abed shall think themselves accursed they were not here, and hold their manhoods cheap, while then he speaks the thought with us upon St. Crispin's Day!
Again, let's see. 3 minutes and 15 seconds, and that included some of this part at the beginning that you're not going to memorize. So let's say 3 minutes as opposed to 1 minute, which is about 1:15 what it took you to memorize the first one. So anyway, I think maybe you realize it can be done, and I guess I'm teasing you. I told you I'm not going to give it to you yet because I didn't run it off exactly, but you'll get it tomorrow. And we're going to work on those first, actually 12 lines. When you see it, there's going to be a section that's marked out because he didn't say it, we don't say it. So instead of 50 lines, it'll be 40. I have one more thing to give you, kind of as an introduction to this. And you may keep this. I think it's genius. I wish I could have done this. This is what's called a parody. What is a parody?
It's like playing on something to like. It's like there's like a original and then it's like they make a remake of it.
For what purpose?
Make
For
it
comedy
funny.
purposes.
Right, so this is for humor, but it's, I think it's, I'm exaggerating, but it's almost genius what they, this person did. I think it's really. All right, the purpose of this, and I'll turn this around. The purpose of this is, in order to parody something, which is to make fun of it, I mean, you're really not, maybe you're making fun of Shakespeare, you're also making fun of the song, but you take the greatest writer of all time, and you take one of the simplest, silliest poem songs of all time, and you mix those two things. What it does show is that the writer of the Shakespearean version knows how Shakespeare writes. And let's just, after we read it, I'm going to ask you, what do you notice about the style? So you know the song goes, put your left foot in, take your left foot out, put your left foot in and shake it all about. You do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. All right, here's Shakespeare's version. O proud left foot that ventures quick within, then soon upon a backward journey life, anon, once more the gesture then began. Command sinistral pedestal to rise. Commence thou then the fervid hokey poke, a mad gyration, hips in wanton swirl, to spend a wild release from heaven's yoke. Blessed dervish, surely canst go, girl, the hope, the poke, banish now thy doubt. Verily I say, 'tis what it's all about. And now, so, if you think about it for a second, it's like I said, I think it's a minor masterpiece. But what does he do in the poem that you associate with Shakespeare? What sort of writing and examples? Yes.
He word jumbles, so he basically just switches around all the words and makes it sound fancy.
All right, so he inverts the order of the syntax, that's the technical term for it. One reason you do that is to create the iambic pentameter. That's one reason you do that. You have to kind of play with it in order to get into that rhythm. So he does that, very good. What else do you notice he does? What kind of words does he use? Yes?
Like O and then words that we don't really use now.
So, oh, proud left foot, what literary device is that? He's talking to his foot.
Personification.
It is a form of personification. When you talk to an object or a person who cannot talk back. We've done it 3 or 4 times this year.
So is it the dead one that is around and followed enough?
It's a what?
Is it in the?
No, but at least you're trying, yeah.
Is that the one that's apostrophe when he's talking to the ground?
Yes, and,
It's called an apostrophe.
yeah, it's an apostrophe. So he uses an apostrophe, that's fancy, that fancy poetic device. Notice some of the language, it's elevated language. Sinistral, pedestal, rise, wanton. So, you know, he uses the kind of language Shakespeare used. Like I said, I think it's interesting to think that the language simply wasn't big enough for Shakespeare. He had to create 2,000 other words in order to express the ideas that he had. That shows you how important he was. So you may keep this, and of course it's the mixture of that mixture of the modern and the old. Thou surely canst go, girl, and then 'tis what it's all about. That's an idiom from a modern one. So anyway, you can keep that. I think they're fun to look at. Let's look at this briefly, and then we'll look at the book. We still have another quiz we need on Canterbury Tales. Those are good words, and so they will be next week. I'll make the assignment tomorrow, but I suggest you go ahead and define them if you haven't. We got 15 more words, Canterbury Tales, and then we'll have 2 quizzes here. We've already got 5 quizzes. 4 of them in the book already, maybe even 5, because the recitation counted twice. So we may already have 5 quizzes, and then the one that you just took will be a 6th, and the one next week would be a 7th. We don't need a whole lot more quizzes here, but we will do these words, good words. The literary terms, some specific ones that apply to the play. There are 100 questions, and that's what I want to, before we look inside the book just a second, notice that most of them have about 14, 15 questions, but not the last one. The last one has 4 questions, or 5 questions. Let me explain what goes on with Shakespeare. You can write this down. You certainly need to know it. I'm not going to write it on the board. All Shakespeare's plays have 5 acts. Do you remember this? I always taught this is helpful. You remember the plot diagram? I drew that up here the day before Christmas when we were doing a Christmas story. By the way, I wrote one. Did I tell you that? If I have time at some point, I might read it to you. But I was inspired. I went home and wrote a Christmas story. And this is just like basic for a story. The first part is technically called the exposition. You could call it the introduction. So Act 1 in Shakespeare's plays serve as the role of the exposition. What do you do in the exposition?
Introduce people.
What else do you introduce?
The setting and what's going on.
And the conflict. So the conflict usually begins in the first act, and it begins to move. What's going on next? And notice that whoever came up with this used the triangle, or used that kind of design to express this. Yeah.
The rising climax and the action.
When you mean rising, what's rising?
So there's usually something going wrong and they need to like fix it, and so there's a lot of tension.
Yeah. So it already starts in Act 1. It's not so simple as I'm making it sound. Like all the Act 1 does the introduction and so forth. They overlap. But in this area, the problem becomes worse. My favorite example is this movie. I think it was called Armageddon. I think it was Bruce Willis. And there was this asteroid coming on Earth, and so they sent this team up to land on the asteroid and nuke the asteroid. And I can't remember all the things, but everything goes wrong. You know, the button won't work. He gets his foot caught. The spaceship won't turn on, or something like that. It's like every possible problem, and the clock is ticking the whole time. You got 5 minutes left, and I think he stays there and detonates it where everybody leaves. But that's what writers do. You would create a conflict, and your job is to make it worse. Now, funny thing about that is, in life, you want your life to be free of problems. I know I do, and I bet you do too. You want as few problems as possible, but not as a writer. You want as many problems as possible, because that's what keeps the people reading it. So the second act in Shakespeare always is a complication. What's going to happen in the third act? I think you said it, Lily. Okay, what's the climax?
It's like the tipping point of the story, like where there's like kind of like the like heated part of the story, like where it's like the most interesting, like when the complications like being sorted out, kind of.
Yeah, and think about it. If you're watching a Shakespeare play and you're halfway through, you don't want the most important thing, most exciting thing in the play to happen, do you? Because, all right, we've seen it. I know what comes next. The bad guy just got killed. I'm bored now. Let's go home. But you're also right that it's the tipping. Look, literally, the line begins to go in a different direction. So the way I look at it is, usually in Act 3, something happens that now turns the tide. Instead of complication, you're now going to be seeing the outcome or the resolution of the problems, which is what you have here. Falling action. In the fourth act and in the fifth act. The reason I said that, look, there are only 5 questions. really very little happens in the fifth act of this play. We have sometimes not read the fifth act, except because we ran out of time. I don't think that'll happen this year. But the action begins to fall, the resolution, the conflicts begin to be solved. And in that last act of this, all you have left is Henry's gonna marry the girl or not. Is he gonna get the girl or not? There's a huge dialogue between Henry and the girl. And he eventually does marry her. Remember, this play is true. It's not the dialogue, but the person and the major events are all based on fact. It's funny, this is, I understand, the last history play that Shakespeare wrote. The first history play Shakespeare wrote is the next play in the series. So Henry VI, part 1, 2, and 3, I believe was the first act, was the first history play he wrote. And that actually, I think, is part of a different tetralogy. Not sure about that, but there are really two tetralogies, two 4-play series. And this particular series starts with Richard II, goes to Henry IV, part 1, then part 2, and then Henry V. So that's kind of the way the play is put together. Now, if you take a look at your book, I gotta find a copy of your book. It's got a pretty good introduction. I'm currently trying to read it. I'm gonna have to get a book myself, but turn to page 43. You're welcome to read it. I don't know if you will or not. You don't have to. Turn to the list of characters or the list of roles. Yes.
Are I keeping these books?
These are yours. You may keep them. I expect you to write, and like I said, I cannot teach from that book because all my notes are in this book. The notes are so valuable. I remember when that happened. The Inferno is worse, and when I show you the Inferno, literally it's page by page. I have a rubber band around it, and it fall out. Maybe if I were to figure out some way to transfer those notes, but I haven't ever had the time to do that. So let's look at the character. This is not like most of the readings we've done, which are the epic poems, in which you read a stanza, then somebody else reads a stanza. Here you read a part. And look, there are a lot of parts, but not all of them speak, and not all of them speak a lot. So let me go through. You can even check the ones that you can be considering. Henry has the yeoman's work to do here. He carries the play. I don't remember how many lines he says altogether, but we can share the role of Henry. And then he has his entourage. He has his brothers, his uncle, and his cousin. The ones we're most concerned about would be Exeter. So why don't you check some of these? Hello? Yeah. Sure. All right, so check Exeter. York doesn't have a big role. I don't even think he says anything, but Exeter has a few lines. Let's go down to the two archbishops. Circle those, or bracket them, or check them. We're going to need to start off all right off the bat. It's right below the uncles and the cousins. Archbishop of Canterbury and Bishop of Ely. So these two men are plotting to encourage Henry to attack France. Why would two religious men be wanting war? Well, you'll find out. But we'll need Canterbury and Ely. They dominate the first scene. And then you go to these three. They have a few lines, but the next three guys are Cambridge, Scroop, and Gray. You can kind of bracket those as they have here. Those are traitors. They actually conspire to kill Henry. I think one of them is actually a cousin. And then you have his officers. And this is interesting because this war was fought between England and France, but England had somewhat of an international army. You've got the island of Britain. You've got Great Britain, and what we call today the United Kingdom. Well, the United Kingdom today consists of England, can you picture this in your head? We will look at a map. You got that island of England. South and west of it, as a part of the island, is Wales. Like the Prince of Wales will be the next king of England after his mother, if she ever dies. I don't think she's ever gonna die. Not that I want her to. But her son is Charles, the Prince of Wales. Anyway, above England is what country in the same island? What's right at the top of the island of Britain?
Scotland.
Scotland. Now, they have had, if you've seen like Braveheart, they've had problems with the Scots and the English have fought for years. But they are now part of the same country, although there has been talk over the last few years of Scotland trying to form its own country. Anyway, you got those three, and then right west, you've got Ireland, but today, Northern Ireland, it's a northern tip of the island of Ireland, is Northern Ireland. That's part of the United Kingdom. So I can't remember exactly in 14, 15, how many of those countries were actually a part of now of Great Britain. But what I'm getting at is Erpingham is English. Llewellyn is Welsh. Gower, what is Gower? Gower is English. Jamie is Scot, and McMorris is Irish. And so these guys represent sort of Henry's ability to bring people that don't like each other, like the Scots don't like the English, they don't like the Irish, but he's able to bring them together to form an army. Yes.
What was Jamie?
Jamie is he's Scottish, and McMorris. One of my high school assistant coaches in football, he was the head basketball coach at Page High School. If you ever been over there, the gym at Page is named after Mac Morris. That was it. McGregor Morris was his name, but everybody called him Mac, so Mac Morris, and that's the name here. Then you have, and we're almost done here, but you have these 4 or 5 common soldiers, and they are Bardolph, Nym, Pistol, those 3, and the hostess. And so they always speak in prose, so we're going to need people to read those parts. There are not very many women here. You've got the hostess, you've got the daughter of the Queen of France, what is her name, Catherine? But so, ladies, you're going to have to help read the men's part. But anyway, you got those. And then you have the French side. So let me just point out some of the French. You're going to need a king of France, Charles VI, and then his wife. She doesn't say a lot. Catherine, she eventually marries Henry, and Alice is her helper, her, what do you call it, nanny or governess. And then you got the Dauphin. The Dauphin is the king-to-be. And I guess it would be Charles VII? I'm not sure, but anyway, he becomes the next king in Henry VI. So Henry VI and the Dauphin. And then you got these other guys, they don't speak a lot. And then you've got some more French. So basically, Henry's gonna carry the load here, but Henry's gonna need some help. So tomorrow when we come in here, I'm going to, we'll just get to reading. I'll give you a copy of the speech, and we'll get to reading the play. Last year we had to finish it in quarantine. So this will bring back bad memories for me, because I remember trying to do this while we were on video, and it was hard.